A night that changed everything. It was the 26th of November, a quiet neighborhood, nothing unusual, until a sudden eruption of flames shattered the stillness of the night. Smoke curled into the sky. The sound of sirens echoed through the streets as firefighters rushed toward a burning apartment. They fought the fire with everything they had, and when the flames finally died down, they found something far worse than they had expected. Lying on the floor among the charred remains of what was once a home was a woman, still, silent, lifeless. She had been a teacher, respected, loved, a woman who had shaped young minds and built a life of her own. But tonight, that life had come to an end. At first, it seemed like a terrible accident, but when investigators looked closer, their blood ran cold. This was no accident. The evidence was undeniable. Beneath the burns, there were bruises, wounds, signs of a struggle. The fire had been set deliberately, a desperate attempt to erase the truth. Who would do this? And why? The answers lay with one man, a man who had just returned from abroad, a man who had once meant everything to her. Years ago, their story had begun in the most ordinary of places, a supermarket, a simple encounter, a conversation that led to something more. For a while, it had been beautiful. He had adored her, and she, well, maybe she once cared too. But time changes things. People change. Distance grew between them. Arguments became more frequent. The warmth faded, until, finally, she let him go. But he never truly let go of her. He left the country, tried to start over. But no matter where he went, she was always in his thoughts. And now, after all this time, he was back. The first thing he did? Call her. "I need to see you," he said. She was hesitant, too hesitant, but after a pause she agreed. That night he stood in front of her door, waiting, hoping. But when the door finally opened, everything changed. The tension was there from the start. She didn't smile, didn't welcome him in like she used to. Instead, she crossed her arms. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I just wanted to talk," he replied. A long silence. Then she sighed and let him in. He looked around. Everything was the same, except her. She wasn't the woman he remembered. And then the words started. Cold, cruel, final. "You never meant anything to me. You were a mistake. This was never real." Each word struck like a blade. His breath caught, his heart pounded, his hands clenched into fists. The woman he had spent years thinking about, the woman he thought he still loved, was looking him in the eyes and saying that none of it had mattered. On the table there was a glass. Without thinking, he grabbed it and threw it across the room. It shattered. She flinched but didn't react the way he expected. Instead, she laughed, and in that moment, something inside him snapped. Rage blurred his vision. The emotions, the heartbreak, the humiliation, everything exploded at once. He didn't think. He acted. His hand reached into his pocket where he had hidden a knife he took from her kitchen moments before. Why had he taken it? Even he didn't know. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. She saw it. Her smile vanished. Fear filled her eyes for the first time. She turned to run, but he grabbed her. The struggle was short, desperate. And then, silence. A breath. A pause. The weight of what had just happened crashed down on him. He stepped back, trembling. What had he done? Panic took over. He needed to erase this. The iron she had been using to press her clothes was still hot. A moment of madness. A terrible decision. He set the fabric on fire. The flames spread fast, too fast. He turned and ran. Didn't look back, didn't think. But the truth always finds its way out. The investigation moved quickly. A single phone call, a return flight. Witnesses who had seen him. The pieces fit together. And when they found him, he didn't resist. I just wanted to see her, he said. But some doors should never be reopened, some people should never be revisited, and some mistakes can never be undone.